because I actually help others connect with their loved ones in spirit as well, and it's in clearing that heart and not having any expectations, because in that process you're going to feel that if when it doesn't happen when you want it, like the anger, the resentment, it's like, why aren't you coming to me, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm asking you, right? And then you start to, all these things, unhealed things start to come up, right? The memories that you're still holding on to, the sadness, all that. And then you realize that it's in letting go of that that you're able to connect. It makes it much easier for spirit to connect.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to Journey of a Fearless Female. I am your host, Paola Rosser, and this week my guest is Nubbia Quezada. She's embarked on a deep spiritual awakening that ignited her transformative journey and a profound connection with the spiritual realm. Following the heart-wrenching loss of her brother to the grips of mental illness, her journey led her to the core of her being, revealing the authentic woman that lived within her all along. Nubbia is a mother of three remarkable children who are her grounding force. Her journey has taught her the power of unlocking her inner potential and embracing life with abundance, gratitude, and boundless love. She stands as a beacon of hope, a testament of strength to the human spirit, and a guide for those seeking to illuminate their own paths. With unwavering dedication, Nubbia strives to inspire and empower, creating a world where each heart finds its rhythm and each soul finds its truth. Wow, that's beautiful. Everybody, please welcome Nubbia. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank
How
you.
are
Thank
you?
you for having me. I'm doing great. I'm doing really, really good.
So
I'm
tell
excited to
us.
be here.
I'm excited to have you. I'm like literally, I like giddy because I have been in a place for the last, gosh, ever since my dad passed away. I have been in a deep rabbit hole of like near death experiences and connecting to those who have passed. And, it took me a long time to really be open that that's what I like to listen to. It's actually what brought me a lot of comfort after my dad's passing. But there's so many people that criticize, near death experiences or people who actually connect with those who have crossed over. And, it's kind of like this taboo, but it's becoming more and
Mhm.
more of an open conversation and a topic. So I'm so excited to have you. I know that you went through something
Oh,
tragic, though, to get to this place. So let's start by telling your fearless female journey from the beginning.
oh my gosh. I think everyone says, where do I start, right?
Mhm.
So I guess in essence, just even to begin with, I also grew up, 'cause I've heard some of your podcasts and you've mentioned that you also grew up in going to church, and I grew up Catholic. So there was a lot of those teachings, of course, that I was brought up with, going to church and all that. And so I've always had this sense of the spiritual connected to God,
Mhm.
but there's still something that didn't just sit well with me when with certain teachings and things like that. So I kind of like picked and chose what resonated with me, and I kind of just went with it. So I always felt very connected to spirit, and even this connection that I had with my brother after he had passed, it actually reminded me of many connections that I had when I was a child. But I remember as a child when I used to bring it up or try to share it with my parents, it was like literally say an Our Father, and just
Yeah.
it's like you don't speak to
Pour salt on the
spirits, right?
floor so they're not around you.
Right? It's like say a prayer or whatever, and it was always kind of brushed off. And so, I mean, as a kid, we are open to that a lot more, and I've witnessed it with my children as well, especially after my brother has passed. He has come to visit them as well, and it's absolutely so beautiful. And especially in the beginning when I was so open to receive, and that's how I actually started.
Mhm.
Was the day that I was at my brother's viewing, I knew that I was going to connect with him, and I asked him for a sign. He was literally like laying in his coffin, and I remember hugging his head, and I kind of was just whispering in his ear, and I just said, Justin, his name was Justin, please just send me a sign. I need to know that you made it. I need to know that you're okay. Please, like, I'll be waiting. And I told him I loved him. I kissed him on his forehead, and that was that. So the next day, after we went to the mass service, it was done. I came back to the funeral home, and I just to gather his belongings, and I just sat there. And one of the embalmers, she came in, and then she just sat with me, and I spoke out loud. I'm like, I'm just waiting for a sign from my brother. And then she looks at me, and she starts kind of getting teary eyed. And in my head, I'm like thinking, hey, you're supposed to kind of like not show that type of emotion, I guess,
Yeah.
because you're trying to like support. And but then that kind of caught me off guard. But then she asked me if I was spiritual. So when she asked me, I looked at her, and I said yes. And she's like, I don't normally do this because I don't know how families are going to react, because it is a very sensitive topic and situation. But I feel like you're someone that is like almost like waiting for this. So she actually goes, she's like, I have something for you. So she goes to the office, she comes back, and she brings me like a note. And I'm like,
What?
a note? Yes. So she brings me a note, and then I'm like, on my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, my brother wrote a letter. Like, how do you even have this?
Mhm.
So I started reading, and I finished. I'm like, where did you get this? Right? And she's like, I believe that your brother came to someone I know to relay this message. And she was just like, I can just tell, that she had like this sense of like calm, but also this energetic vibe that she had towards it, this kind of connection that we kind of had. And I had to know more. I'm like, hey, who is this person? So I connected with this person, and then he goes on to tell me, before he shares his stories, is saying that he has known this woman for over a decade, and she's never shared these type of experiences before, because I mean, you don't really share your work. I mean, usually with that type of work, when you're getting a body ready for their families, it's just one of those things that you just leave at work,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So she said that, he's like, I don't know why, but there's just strong energetic force while I was getting my brother ready, that she's like, it was just something she never felt before.
Mm.
So she when she spoke to her friend, she shared that experience. So that's where like that connection was built. Like, my brother connected with, her name was Jennifer, and Jennifer connected with her friend, and that's where that gap
Yeah.
was bridged. And so that night, he just goes on by telling his story, and then he says, I was just like a normal night, I was just watching TV, and all of a sudden the door opens. And we've all had those experiences where, like, the door is open or it's closed, and then kind of the wind opens, and we don't think much about it, we just close the door.
Yeah.
So he goes up, he closes the door, he comes back, and like minutes later it opens again. And at that point, it's late at that point too. It was the kids were already sleeping. So he's like, is the kids messing with me? Like, he gets up, opens the door, there's nobody there, he checks on the kids, and they're sleeping. So he's like, this is odd. So he just comes back in his room, he closes the door, he makes sure that it's like shut. He goes back to watch the movie, and then he ends up falling asleep. Around 3:34 in the morning, he actually ends up waking up again, and he's like wide awake, and then the door opens again. He's like, at that point, he's like, I knew someone or something was trying to get my attention. He didn't know that it was my brother at the time. And then so he gets up, he walks towards the door, and his first instinct was to just like open the door quick and turn on the light, right? And
Yeah.
he said, as soon as right? And so he does that, and he's like, as soon as I did that, I saw this tall shadow like on his wall, and then it was like walking towards the room. And he said that he actually like kind of took a step back to kind of receive this presence, and he said that he didn't feel scared, like he actually felt safe.
Mm.
And then when he felt the presence, he said that it's almost as if like when it's kind of like almost like going inside him. But he said the way he wrote was if my brother was trying to tell him to relay a message, and he wrote it by feeling the emotions, like it was the pain, the anger, the suffering, but also like the peace and the calm and just that light.
Yeah.
And then he's like, it was just so powerful that when he was done writing, he just kind of closes his eyes. And then that's when he saw my brother. And
Mm.
he said he saw my brother. And he's like, this is the part that I didn't understand, is that your brother was with somebody else. They were walking like towards this big white, bright light. But this person looked like exactly like him, as if they were twins.
Ooh.
My heart just sank. My mom was actually listening to the conversation as well.
Yeah.
And my mom just went like, oh my gosh, just in tears. And in Spanish, she said, Dios mío, se encontró con su hermanito. My
Oh.
brother was a twin.
Did you know that?
So my brother's twin died while my mom was pregnant. So my
Unbelievable.
brother's brother, my brother, was waiting for him.
Yeah.
And this person we don't know this person at all. And that's why it was like really odd for him. He's like, when I saw your brother, like I saw two of them. It was like, and then when he said twins, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So
Like, how is he supposed to know that?
he
Yeah. How is he supposed to know
exactly
that?
nobody really knew that at all. Like it wasn't something, especially I know in that Latino culture, like everything's very kind of secretive, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't talk about, you don't like, right?
Everything
And
stays within the family.
so right, such an incredible journey, because that was the beginning stages where I knew that my brother was going to guide me and be with me during this healing process, this journey. I didn't know what I was going to get myself into. That was just one story, one connection, one sign that led to, I can't even count anymore how many connections I received with him. It's led me to a place where I took the time to, to heal, to go through all of these steps. And it's a never ending journey, but to really tackle all the things that are kind of weighing on you, things that come up that you didn't even think that were an issue, right? It's, you start peeling all the layers and find out who you really are and why you are the way you are, and then just understanding that that was your growth as a child and in your adolescence and all the things that you've gone through. It really is like you become like this the byproduct of your environment, right? And your parent, how your parents parented you and all of that, and your the situations that you've been through, the things that you were exposed to, the things that you were told, right?
Yeah.
And but as you get older, and that's when the healing journey started, because the connections that I had with my brother were just so beautiful. It came to a point where I can just talk to him, and that's where I'm in this transformative stage that I'm in. One of the reasons why I've been so motivated to do what I'm doing now is to inspire and take out that shame that people actually feel, because in sharing my stories, which again are so many beautiful connections, it brought back a memory. It ignited something in people where, whether something they experienced as a child or something within their lifetime, that they felt a connection, but they didn't know how to express it, how to interpret it, or if they tried to share it with somebody, it was turned down. They were probably ridiculed or made fun of, or, crazy,
Yeah.
get over it, whatever the case may be, right? And those things, it leaves like an emotional imprint on
Hmm.
somebody, right? So then when you experience something later on, you remember that feeling, you remember that connection, and then you start to put the pieces together. But until you can openly like actually discuss it and like almost like free yourself from keeping that almost like just stored, it brings out something in somebody that you start to feel more empowered and connected, and you want to get to know yourself all over again. And that's where I think the true beauty comes in when it comes to being a spiritual being, because we all are. And I've really come to really understand and on a deeper level that we're all really here to help one another out and lift each other up. You know,
Mhm.
my passions, your passions, everyone's passions, we have the opportunity to inspire others to pursue their passions. Especially there's so many people who need healing and need
Yes.
help and need guidance, you know, and heal people, just like hurt people,
Mhm.
right? There needs to be like that balance where the goal would be more healed people are healing the hurt people,
Yeah.
right? And it's just such it's been such a beautiful transformative journey that people need to find that spark within them again, and in the pursuit of their soul's purpose, and not just living that day-to-day life with the same routine, the just going through the motions, almost
Yeah.
lifeless. Even those who have attained great things, right? Because I've come across many people like that as well that have been in my circle where on the outside they look that they have it all, put together, but they're really suffering inside,
Yeah,
right?
because we've been
Instead of
sold the
that
dream that
inner
the
growth.
outside stuff is gonna bring us joy and happiness, and so we were sold the American
Mhm,
dream to go get all the things that actually cause you way more stress
mhm.
and anxiety to have and to maintain
It's
than to
true.
finally be yourself. But yeah, there's so much that I would love to talk about. Let's go back to the beginning of your story when you were
Sure.
talking to your brother and he was laying in the casket. What was it that was going through your mind that was giving you the doubt of like, tell me you made it? Was it your Catholic upbringing that made you doubt that he made it to the other side to what
That's
the
actually a
Catholics
really
would
great
like to
question.
yeah, what the Catholics would like to call heaven?
Because of the circumstances of his death, it wasn't like he wasn't like he didn't have cancer or anything like that. It was self-inflicted. You know, I've always, especially when it comes to the Catholic religion,
Mhm.
it's like a sin, right? You don't do that. You don't take your life, right?
Yeah.
And so I actually remember during that time that when we were going to do the mass service, that the priest questioned whether he was allowed to perform the service,
Wow.
because and I don't think that was necessarily the piece of that doubt. It was more because of the darkness that he went through, and just I just needed to have that peace of mind and closure that he made it to the light, right?
Yeah.
Because if you get into getting to know more about the spirits in the spiritual realm, there's different stages,
Mhm.
right? There's that in between stage too, right? Where prayer and all that does help people cross to the other side. I didn't want, I mean, it wouldn't have been my decision, but to know that so much suffering that he endured when he was here, like I to go into that middle stage, it was just going to be that you're in that you're lost spirit,
Yeah.
right?
And that's what the Catholic
So,
religion wants you to believe, right? That they're
mhm,
if they caused you
yeah,
to if they had a sin, then they are stuck in what is it called?
purgatory.
Purgatory, they're stuck in
Yeah.
purgatory to suffer even more, and I really resonate with your story because that's how my spiritual journey started. It was, 2006 when my dad passed away, and my dad was an alcoholic, and I remember going home after the hospital and thinking there's just no way that my father is being tortured to death, or tortured for eternity in
Mhm.
hell. I just couldn't
Yeah.
wrap my brain around this benevolent, unconditional love, which is what we call God, source, the
Mm.
divine, would do that to
Mhm.
what we're taught. Like we're children of God, we're the child of the most high God. Like God doesn't, want to hurt God's children. So to me, I just
Mhm.
couldn't fathom that. And I love that you asked him for a sign. That was just a
Mhm.
beautiful thing to do in that moment, and that he came through and gave you that sign. I have listened to so many near death experiences. Like I am an
Mhm.
addict when it comes to listening to them. And I've listened to thousands and thousands of stories. I was listening to one before we got on this podcast because it's like one of my things, because the algorithm knows what I like, it sends me more. And I have listened to so many, and even people who have tried to commit suicide and didn't succeed, they are all met with the same
Mhm.
unconditional love. And hell isn't it, to me, isn't it a dimension here on earth.
Yeah.
We have the
Yes.
choice to make ourselves, heaven or hell, and we choose daily, and I was just talking to a good friend of mine, and I don't know if you watched the Barbie movie. So in the Barbie movie, and I'm spoiling it for anybody who's listening or watching on YouTube, make sure you fast forward the next 10 minutes, but I kind of felt like it was really, really spiritual in the sense, because I have been in this my own spiritual journey of like really digging deep into the other side and what happens. Like, it really has given me so much more peace and calmness of death,
Mhm.
rather than what the church wanted me to believe. And
Mhm.
when I was watching that movie in the beginning, she's like in this beautiful place, Barbie Land, right? And she's like having fun. She's with all of her best friends, and she's always having brunch, and she's always having like volleyball in the beach, and she's always having sleepovers with her best friend, and everybody's always so happy and everyone's so excited to be around you, and then they're dancing, and she's like, "Does anyone ever thought about death?" And everything just like stops, and they're like, "No, we don't talk about like that." And they go back to partying. She's like, "Sorry." And then the whole movie is like, something else, but at the end she wants to become a human, and the lady who created her, which the creator tells her, "Put your hand
Mhm.
in my hand." And she's like, "Now breathe." And the person gets snippets or glimmers of what life would be like on earth. And I think we all do
Yeah.
that as souls. And I've read many books about the soul's journey, and we get snippets of life here on earth. And they always show you the best reels, right, of your life. And you're like, "Yeah, I'll do that. I want to go down there and experience love and motherhood. And, I want to experience all of those things." But they don't tell you all the bad, because if they showed you the bad and the dark nights of the
Yeah.
soul and the torture and all that stuff, and you probably wouldn't want to come down here.
Mhm.
And I think that we get here earlier. You said we have this like knowing when we're younger. We have like the veil is a lot thinner, which is, I feel like I've seen a lot of videos where the kids say, "Oh, I remember when I was this person," or "I remember being your mom,"
Yeah.
and they have these, or
Yeah.
I could see grandpa in the corner, and they're like, "What the heck?" Because the veil is a lot thinner. They're
Mhm.
closer to source than we are. And I think you get here, and then you have this beautiful light that we're supposed to share in the world, and we
Mhm.
all have gifts. We have these beautiful things that we're supposed to do. But because the people, like you said earlier, the hurt people hurt others, the wounded people wound others, and then we get all this pain, all this sorrow, and some people work through it and, fight through it, but then some people, it really affects them a lot, and they can't
Mhm.
get themselves. There's not enough self-help books, there's not enough therapy, there's not enough drugs. They can't
Mhm.
get themselves out of that darkness. Even though they tried, and sometimes they just can't take the immense pain, and they have to
Mhm.
exit, and they're ready to go back to source where it's pure light and love.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
understand that. And I
Mhm.
don't think that, and maybe that's just my own theory, my own conspiracy theory, but what do you what do you think, y- from your
Wow.
conversations with your brother?
Actually, that is exactly it. Like a lot of what you're saying, it's through the connection with, my brother. One of the things that really stood out to me was when he said, even just like, before I even go to the story, my brother knew to connect me with certain people, and two of them were actually mediums that connected with me, and to relay messages. One of them specifically that he said in his message, just to kind of almost provide that clarity, was one God, many names,
Yes.
right? So at the end of the day, when you want to go religion, there is a common goal,
Mhm.
right? In terms of like, love and care for one another and be there for your family and all those things. But then there's, of course, there's the political side of things, and there's control, and that's not what it's all about. So when that's in that space of spirituality, in creating that oneness with the higher source, God, it's bringing us back to a state where we can actually be the creator. And
Mm-hmm.
it's in the things that we go through in our lives, like you said, the pain, the sorrow, the darkness, the suffering, all those things. It's as almost that as a spirit, because we didn't know we were going to experience this, when you go through this type of spiritual awakening, you almost have this realization. It's like, wow, like as a human being, I'm experiencing sadness. I'm
Mm-hmm.
experiencing all the emotions, but I also have the power to turn it into something beautiful,
Yeah.
right? It's in that moment where you realize that you have the power to change things and to manifest the things that you want and to do the things that you love to do and help the people that you want to help. You're just in a different state of being, like, you know, the way you see things, your perspective, and how you have compassion not only for yourself, because that's like a big one, is this lack of compassion that we have for ourselves, that we try to, and that was actually me actually for, and I didn't realize, when you're hurt, you find this fulfillment in helping others,
Yeah.
right? But it's like just filling a void, right? When it comes to being in a state, and meditation definitely helps calm that, bringing you back to a center of consciousness where you can actually connect. And that's through practice I've been able to do that so greatly, and just sharing stories even just from my children. And then it made me realize that when they've had their spiritual connections, like we were at the park one time, it was about a month ago actually, and my son was like on this like kind of like this swing, but it looked like kind of like a little pyramid, and he was top of the of this kind of swing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just, I was looking at him and I just see him waving, and I'm like, my son, his name is Damien, I'm like, Damien, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just waving to Tio Justin. He's like, he's here with us right now. I'm like, and in one of my brother's readings, he said that he would be with us a lot at the parks and things like that, like always around the children and just being there, just to enjoy those moments,
Yeah.
right? And my daughter was like 3 weeks after we came back home after dealing with everything after the funeral in Toronto. We came back home, and my daughter was sleeping, and all I hear is her kind of like mumbling, and then she's like, Justin, like, and she's 2 at the time.
Yeah.
And me and my mom were like folding clothes, and we look at each other. I'm like, no way, right? And then like just 5 minutes later, she just comes out of the room. We had actually one of the bags from the funeral home with us, and it had fallen. And there was just that one, you know, you get a card
Mm-hmm.
when you go to a funeral, like a picture. So it had
Yeah.
fallen. Only one picture was just a random card. Was just, it was fell over, and it was kind of like peeking out of the bag. And then she's like, oh, she looks at the image. She's like, oh, Justin. And she's like, Justin, where are you? She starts playing like hide and go seek, looking for him. And so we're like, oh my gosh. And she saw him at this, because the picture at the front that was on the card was the same age as her,
My gosh.
so around 2 years old. Right? So
Yeah.
when my brother came to her, she didn't he didn't come as a man. He came as a little boy,
Yeah.
right? So it's been so beautiful in terms of like connections and signs, and how if we can even ask for a specific sign, it's because I actually help others connect with their loved ones in spirit as well. And it's in clearing that heart, and not having any expectations, because in that process you're going to feel that, if when it doesn't happen when you want it, like the anger, the resentment, it's like, why aren't you coming to me, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm asking you, right? And then you start to, all these things, unhealed things start to come up, right? The memories that you're still holding on to, the sadness, all that. And then you realize that it's in letting go of that that you're able to connect. It makes it much easier for spirit to connect.
Yeah.
So it's been getting, getting messages like, oh my gosh, like Nubia, like my dad, like, I finally, my dad connected with me. And it happens always as soon as they let go, and almost in the sense of like, I'm not gonna, I'm done trying to like seek you. And as soon as in that moment, let go of that expectation, it's like, boom, it happens.
Yeah. Oh
Right.
my gosh.
And it just creates this sense of not even, I wouldn't even say fulfillment. It's like this peace and calm, because it makes you really realize that like the little problems that you're making it big, or the issues that you have, like again, the way you see things, everything just comes down. And you want to be a better father, you want to be a better brother or sister, you want to be a better son, you want to be a better friend. It so much just comes naturally in you, like comes out of you, because that's who we are. We're
Yeah.
all beautiful human beings, no matter. And I truly humbly believe that everyone, no matter what they've done, deserves love and forgiveness, because they were also once a child
Yes, I believe the
who's been.
same thing.
When we judge and condemn someone, it's, imagine, I should not even imagine, you can never say, because you've never been in their shoes, right? You
Yeah.
don't know how you would have responded with the same circumstances. It can be anything, whether it's, have you been in rape, or man, like there's so many scenarios that can really truly mess somebody up, right? And you don't know how a person's going to react, even when it comes to bullies, for example.
Yeah.
I say this to my son all the time. I'm like, if somebody tries to bully you or say something that is hurtful, just know it's not you, it's them. They need love. So the thing what you can do is say a little prayer for them and express kindness and love to them. And obviously if it escalates, then we would take things further, but it's really it's all that it is. It's they need love, they need affection, and it's bullying is a way of like attention, right?
Hmm.
And it's just it's sad, or even just circumstances. I know someone who now is older, who used to be a bully when he was younger, and still carries that, because then you remind, you're trying to be a father, you're trying to be the best you can, but you still have it in the back of your head and in your heart of all the things that you did to somebody,
Yeah.
right? Or the pain that you caused somebody. And when you go back even further as to why they even became a bully, like this person was saw a lot of death, like actual
Mm.
death from war as a child, and was angry
Yeah.
and moving to another country. And now all of a sudden it's like all gone, but it's all that horror and that trauma is within you, and you don't know how to express it. So if somebody says something to you, snap. You're always in like, so imagine growing up like that, right? And you never know what somebody is going through. So
Exactly.
it just really brought light into, we almost need to go back to be childlike, right? Because they're not worried about tomorrow or what happened yesterday. They're in the moment. They're playing, they're doing stuff, their minds are all over the place, and that's that. And it just really made, they're able to connect more to spirit because of that state of being. And that's what we're trying to do as adults, is to reprogram the mind,
Yeah.
and now teach ourselves the things that we want to be taught, the things that we believe in, the things that lift us, the things that bring us hope again and happiness, right? We get to do that all over again, and it's actually quite fun. It really is, because even if you go through different challenges, and one of the things for me that took a little longer in my overall healing the was attachment. And when something is taken away from us, and we have like that sense of disappointment and hurt, there's still healing that needs to be made. And that's in anything. It can be any circumstance in your life.
Yeah.
It can be something so small. And then an example for me was when it was, a lot of it was with my dad, right? And I had this like almost not necessarily a resentment, just like this anger as to like, well, why are you the way you are? Like, why don't you want to get better? Why don't you want to heal, or this or that? And I remember he was in such a, I mean, of course, he lost a son, and I knew that he was in a lot of pain. And I remember I actually I flew to Vancouver, and during that flight, I, this movie kind of came up. I don't know if you've ever saw it. It's called The Sun. And I ended
Mm.
up, I saw it and I just didn't think of it. And then it was kind of like bringing me back to it. And when I saw that movie, it, it was literally as if I was watching the story of my dad with my brother.
Wow.
And at the end, yes, it was like, and I know that movie like was literally meant for me at that moment because it made me realize I needed to have more compassion for my father in his state, right? Because I'm like I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to do things. But
Yeah.
why aren't you coming along, right? And that's where I finally realized I need to take a step back and I really just need to focus on myself. And when someone's like asking for help or the guidance or this or that, it will come. And
Yeah.
as soon as I let go, my parents both together, they just went on this different journey, and eventually out of nowhere they came around, and it was just something so different. And it's in that moment that you let go. So
Yeah.
not having high expectations like of other people, because it's really for our own standard and benefit when we
Yeah.
have this expectation
Everyone's
when people
healing journey is different and it's on their
yes,
own timing. It's on their own timing. It's on their own awakening.
yep,
I wanted to
yes,
unpack a couple of things before, because
yeah,
there's so many
sure.
things that you said that I'm just like in
I know.
awe of. So earlier you said the many gods or one God, many names. And it reminded me of this near death experience of this woman who was an atheist. And I really love the story because she said that when she died, the thing that came to her was a square, like a square,
Mm,
a
mhm.
light, but it was a square. And the square talked to her and she's like, "Are you the person that's supposed to take me to the other side? And why are you a square?" And the square said, "Because you love math. Like you love math and you're an engineer and she's like, "So if I was a Christian, you'd show up at Jesus?" "Yeah." "If I was this and you show up as Krishna?" "Yeah." And so then she asked, like, "Well, then what's the right religion?" And instead of telling you what the right religion is, why don't I give you this scenario? And it was beautiful the way they said it. She said, if your daughter or your son was playing tea, like, fake tea, with their little tea or set and everything, would you slap the tea set out of their hand and say, "You're doing it wrong. You're wrong. You're completely wrong," and punish the kid and make the kid feel bad? If they're playing tea and it makes them feel joy and happiness, wouldn't you allow them to just keep playing tea? So for me, there's no right religion. It's whatever makes that person feel whole and at peace and happy, whether it's being Catholic, Christian, Buddhist, whatever, a monk, it's whatever that is and whatever makes you feel. What would you say to somebody? I understand that, you understand that, but what would you say to somebody who is like a staunch Catholic or like a dedicated Christian? And when you try to have this conversation with them and they
Whew.
say, "Oh, you're just getting messages from the demons and the devil," what would you
Yeah,
say? Because I know that that comes up. I see that on TikToks all the time. I see
yeah,
mediums who have like real, like, there's no way this medium could know this about this person. And I know because I've had
yeah,
my own experiences where I know spirit is talking to me and I know that this is real,
mhm,
but this, the religion part of it wants to make you believe that no, you're speaking to the devil or the devil has many faces too, like how would you approach
yeah.
somebody who has that still negativity or that
Oh
block?
gosh. I feel that as if have you been hearing my conversations with my parents?
I'm listening to your conversations. I'm in the corner. No, because I have
um,
also encountered the same.
so if there's one thing that I could say, because again, I've encountered this often, but I realized that in expressing love, compassion, empathy, joy, and happiness, it's not my responsibility to try to convince someone otherwise. And in letting go of trying to prove something or convince somebody. I'm actually lowering myself to that level of where
Mm-hmm.
they're at. Because when someone's in constant, no, this is the right way, or you're not doing the right thing, or you're talking to, like you said, demons, or God is like Jesus is the only way to salvation, and if it's not Jesus, then you're going the other direction. And if it gets to a point where they're really trying to express that belief, do you really, even Jesus as a human being, do you really believe that Jesus would want to see you behaving this way in trying to impose and like force? And because Jesus is love, Jesus is
Yeah.
light, Jesus is all of that. Like he came here, spreading the word of God, and it was all misconstrued in this message and this like order and control, and that's not what he came here to do. And there's war on religion. There's so much hate. There's so much out there, especially within even the Catholic community, right? Like it's like they go to church to whether they're going to go confess or they're going to go, and it's a lot of just from my own experience of what I've seen, there's a lot of guilt
Mm-hmm.
that drives people, because that is the way. And if I'm not doing this, like I'm not going to be with God. God is not going to. God is loving. God
Mm-hmm.
is pure. God is light. God is going to be there for you. What kind of God do you have, or do you believe in, that is going to shame you? That is
Mm-hmm.
going to, like, hit you in the palm of the head? It's, come, my child. Wait, God is wait. No matter who it is, it's every connection with God is just, it's very individual. It's very personal, and no one can take that away from anyone. So if I'm in a place of peace and happiness and, like I said, purity and just joy and this connection and fulfillment, and I'm doing good and I'm helping others, and I'm in a place of just calm and peace, like, why are you trying to take that away from me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just, that's why I don't, when it comes to that, I just remove myself now from the conversation. And then I just, always at the back of my head, I take a deep breath. I'm always wanting to pursue the rest of my steps in that day and moving forward. Just that love and kindness and that compassion for others, because it's in that state of fear and their own judgments and their own projections that people are trying to always convince somebody of this and that. It's almost, and you can change that scenario with so many areas of our lives. Now you have someone who's like, for example, like a pathological liar. They can say the same story over and over and over, where eventually that lie becomes their truth,
Yeah.
right? So, and that's why, if anything, I would say, if whatever that you believe in causes you to feel shame, guilt, or even fear, it's a moment for you to question and just, is that what you want to resonate yourself with? Is that what you want to receive in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Living a life where you're like always feeling like you're being judged, right? We are human. We are living, like, I don't know if you know Wayne Dyer. I love that
Yes, I
saying of,
love Wayne Dyer.
right? And that, we're spiritual beings living a human experience. And if we can find the place of just peace and that true healing, we will all become better human beings for each other,
Yes.
right? And lift one another, right? So if someone's in that place again, like that, they need healing. They need healing, and they need more love, and they need more compassion. They're just not given that, or they're not giving it to them, giving it to themselves,
Yeah.
right? So you can't give love if you can't give love to yourself, because otherwise you actually limit your love, or the potential of your actual love, when you're hiding it from yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So
I
that was
wanted
a
to ask
very
you.
long answer.
It's okay. I wanted to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
So what would you say to somebody who has recently experienced a loss and has never really thought about asking for a sign or asking to connect, or but is desperate to want to connect?
So in that case, if you are listening, then you are here for a purpose and you're meant to listen to what I'm going to say. And it's in that process when someone passes in whatever way that they go, it's when they leave, the pain that we feel will differ from situation to situation, person to person, because we are left with the sense of like emptiness and pain, even resentment and guilt and anger. So
Hmm.
we're left with this heavy set of emotions that it's, and again, every situation is so different depending on the situation, but in that space, I humbly believe that even every death has a lesson, has a greater purpose, has a greater meaning even to your life. Because if someone dies and you are feeling those emotions, it's the divine source, it's your soul pulling you in to say, like, come, my child, we need to work on and healing your heart. We need
Yeah.
to work on connecting yourself with yourself again, because the surrounding is very minimal to how powerful you are to heal and reconnect with yourself and get to know yourself all over again so you can move forward. Because
Hmm.
in that place we stay, and I don't even like saying this word often because I hear it so much of being in that victim mentality, victim mode, but
Hmm.
that's kind of like where we stay for a long time when people pass, right? And it's, you see it like, even in the situation of my brother. It's, in the beginning there was just so much bickering and just blame, and even from like my parents, right? And it's just like constant, and there's just hurting inside. At the end of it all, they are two hurting people
Yeah.
that don't know what else to do but to try to find blame in something else that's outside of them,
Yeah. I always
right?
imagine it as like you're drowning in a pool. Like grief to me feels like you're drowning in a pool and you're trying your hardest to keep above the water so you could breathe. And so you're not intentionally trying to hurt others, but you grab at what you can grab, and who's ever in your vicinity, you'll try to pull them down with you. And you're not trying to
Mhm.
do it on purpose. You're just trying to breathe.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Mhm.
saying you physically want to hurt them, but you do unintentionally because, like you said, you are in
Mhm.
that low vibrational frequency of shame and guilt and fear and anxiety and stress.
Mhm.
And it is like you could feel that frequency when you
Yeah.
go to a funeral versus when you go to a wedding.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
palpable, you could feel the hurt and the pain. But yeah, it's remarkable how beautiful our spirits are. And I really love that,
Mhm.
Wayne Dyer says it too, we are energy and energy never ceases to exist.
Mhm.
This is just the machine that's carrying the soul,
Yeah.
and eventually the
Yeah.
soul goes somewhere, but the machine, it's done. It's like, after a while the machine is ready to just go back to source. And I mean, everything is just a beautiful like cycle. We come from the earth, and I've even seen this one video where they have, because my dad was, he became ashes. I forgot what the word is. I can't, my brain's like having a fart. So instead of being buried,
Cremated?
cremated, yes,
Cremated.
cremated.
Yeah.
And somebody did a video about like when they take a piece of ash and they really take a microscope to it, like, and really zoom in, it looks like the nebulas and the stars, and it looks
Mhm.
like galaxies. So we are from everything, and everything is part of us, and that's just like such a beautiful like existence. I have no fear of death at all. I
You
don't
know?
fear it anymore. I do fear losing people because I know that pain and I don't want to feel that pain again. But yeah, I really tell people who have lost somebody that A, you're allowed to feel all the feelings because
Of
everyone goes
course.
through grief differently. But B, really do your research. Like, don't let the church tell you what's going to happen, because I always think to myself, I was just telling a friend recently who lost her mom, because I was telling her, the reason why I went the near death experience path and started listening to them is because I'm going to talk to the people that have been there and been back. It's like, why am I going to go talk to somebody and say, "Hey, how was Disneyland?" And they've never been to Disneyland. And I'm like, "How
Yeah.
was it? What were the rides like? How long did you have to stand in line? What was the food like? How was parking?" They've never been to Disneyland, but they're going to tell me, this is the people at church. They're going to tell me what heaven is like and what the process is and who I'm going to see and what I'm going to feel. But they've never been there. Why would I take
Mhm.
their advice versus all these people who've had near death experiences? And it's not the flooding of DMT and from their pineal gland. They had real experiences that felt legitimately like they were in a different dimension, surrounded by pure light and love and unconditional. It's an unconditional love that we cannot express here on this realm. They even talk about the
Mhm.
colors, how the colors are brighter and everything is such
Mhm.
like the aroma, everything is they like, I can't even describe. I didn't want to come back. Most every near death experiencer says, I didn't want to come back. It was just better over there.
I think with that being said, it's when you come back, it's because a higher source is saying it's not your time yet, right? Because when people have these experiences, they are enlightened with something, this fire to be like, I want to like share it with the world,
Yeah.
right? And inspire others because they're not the only ones. Back in the day, people were murdered for even talking spirituality,
Mhm.
right? Having these connections, sharing this beauty and light. And it's like, oh, nope, it has to be this way. You thinking different than I am, you're done,
Yeah.
right? Imagine, like, we have come a long way. I know you mentioned this in the beginning that it's becoming like we can talk about it more, right? And people starting to open up more. And it's just, I know this grand, almost like awakening.
Awakening.
People are
Yeah.
starting to like open themselves up, see something, and feel different. Because at the end of it all, we all have that feeling, right?
Mhm.
It's this feeling within us. In the beginning, we almost don't know how to describe it, but it's this like this nature, this force, this something so beautiful that we can't even describe, is just pulling us to be that light, to be that voice. And it's in our decision to be that, to embrace that, to embody that. When we decide to do that, that's when we start to bring people together. Like, how can we shame people for sharing love, you
Mhm.
know, and light and all those kind of things, right?
Right?
And I know there's a lot even within this spiritual realm, how there's just many different sides of it, and then which I can see why there's this stigma,
Mhm.
but you have to go with what feels right
Yeah.
inside of you, because everyone's going to have a different experience, but at the end of it all stems from love.
Yeah.
And love is just so beautiful, and love is something that a lot of us are missing,
Oh.
right?
Yes, a lot of us are missing it. And everybody, I always think about this and I say this to so many people, Jesus gave us one thing to do before he left. He didn't say judge everyone who's a homosexual. He didn't say get mad at everyone who doesn't come to church on Sundays. He didn't say criticize those who don't tithe. He didn't say like shame the people who committed suicide. He didn't say like be angry at the people who have addictions. He said love yourself, love your neighbors, and love your enemies as I have loved you. And we have just completely
Mhm.
messed up the message ever since. And we've caused
Mhm.
division, we've caused hatred. There's people in families who don't speak to each other because they're not following their religious, upbringing. Or I saw on
Mhm.
Reddit the other day, this gay man had wrote in, because I follow all these subreddits, and one of them is atheists, and I always like to read what they say. And this one guy said, he's like, I've been gay my whole life. I've just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I'm a complete atheist, and I've never believed in religion, obviously, because they pushed me out as soon as they found out I was gay. And my mom, when I told her that I had stage 4 cancer, she said, "You need to get baptized and get right with the Lord because you're going to go to hell if you don't." And he's like, the atheist in me doesn't believe her, but the little boy in me who grew up in the church is starting to feel fear because I am gay. And what if I am, stuck in eternal damnation? And I wrote in there, you are going to be met with the most unconditional loving light. I don't think that sprinkling some water on your head is going to change that. If you don't believe in that, that's
Yeah.
fine. But you are going to be met with the most unconditional love that no one can explain. But if it gives your mom solace so that she's not tortured on this plane, trying to figure out where you went, then do it for her. But for yourself, know that you're not going to be met with that, and it just makes me sad because there are a lot of people out there that are so afraid of death. They're so afraid that if they say the
Mhm.
wrong thing or do the wrong thing, or they think about all the things they said. Oh my God, I said God's name in
God's name in vain.
vain,
Mhm.
right? They're so afraid. They're like, the church, like you said earlier, if it's causing you anxiety, if it's causing you shame, if it's causing you guilt, if it's causing you fear, that isn't the spirit of God, because God is pure, unconditional love. As we wrap up this episode, I have so much more to talk to you about. I have another
Yeah,
podcast
I know.
scheduled, but I have so much more to talk to you about. But what would be your nugget of wisdom for anybody who's listening right now?
I would say, so slow down, breathe, take a deep breath. You have meaning and you are filled with so much potential to live your dreams.
Mm, I love that. How can my audience find you?
Well, my website, it's nubbiaquezada.com and it's double B. My name is so complicated.
It's okay. We'll put it in the
So
show notes
Yeah.
so you can click on it.
NubiaQuezada.com. Yeah, I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. So all Nubia Quezada.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
my email is the same thing. Yeah, Nubia at nubiaquezada.com.
All of her contact information will be in the show notes. Make sure you like,
Yeah.
subscribe, and comment. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was an awesome conversation.
Thank you again for listening to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser. If you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual mentor, you can book a free discovery call with me at www.fearlessfemale.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at fearlessfemale_coach, subscribe to my YouTube channel at fearlessfemale, or find me on TikTok. I'm under at paola.rosser. And if you love this episode, make sure you hit subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a review. I read every single review, and I truly appreciate the time you spend writing it.